All right, so I'm on my last cable now, but I just wanted to walk everyone through how I go about soldering cables. Going to be soldering just regular TRS connectors onto, so TRS for those so inclined is tip ring sleeve. So you can see there are three connectors on this connector. So yeah, a plus, a minus, and then a ground. And essentially, what we're doing today is we have a quad cable. So there are four individual connectors inside of one grounded sheath that goes all the way through the cable. Now you're saying, Malin, if there are three connectors total, why do you have a cable that has a total of five wires in it? Well, what we're doing today is we're actually doing adding additional grounding to our connectors. So when you have twisted pairs in here, and I'll show you a little bit closer when we get there. When you have twisted pairs, what they'll do is they'll act as an additional grounding source and rejecting any outside EMF to impact your signal. So you can get a nice clean signal. You don't get any buzzing, humming, etc., etc. It's better at rejection than just regular XLR. So that's why we're going with quad cable. All right, so first things first, before you start stripping or anything like that, you want to get your little butt connectors onto, I call them butt connectors, they're like a strain relief, onto the cable itself. And while you're thinking of it, just do one on each end, because you don't want to get through your whole soldering job and then end up at the end of the road with your soldering all done. You forgot, oh, I forgot to put my butt connectors on. You're gonna take all your soldering off, or just cut the cable again and go from there. So get your butts on first. First step, get your butts on. Second step, you can buy proper stripping tools, and they work in a sense of like biting the sheath on the outside insulator, and then pulling it apart like that. And they're quite effective, but I don't have one of those tools, so I'm using one of these old-fashioned things called a knife. And what we're going to do is we're going to take off, you can measure all this too. This is your strain relief, and so this actually has to sit on the insulation. So you don't want to take off any more than that much of your insulation. I want to say about an inch. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to slice open about an inch from the top. And I'm just going around. I'm not actually like slicing so much as just putting pressure. If I go too hard into the meat, what happens is I'll cut the braided ground on the outside, and that's bad news blues, because then I have to, oh, I didn't get all the way around. Then I have to go and cut that whole end off and then start all over, because you don't want any of, you'll see, you don't want any of your hairs to come out. So I just took the sheathing off, and you can see in this quad cable, this quad cable has this braid around it. See if it'll focus in on that. And this braid is, yeah, that's your grounding sheath on the outside. So there is really no easy way to go about stripping this sheathing off. What you want to do is you want to pull it off so you can work with it and get at the conductors that are on the inside here. I don't know if you can see. Anyway, the best way I found to get around it is just to go with something picky and sharp. This is the end of my my ohm meter, and I'm just taking that off. Let's see if I can do it in frame. And I'm just gonna pull, starting at the end and then work my way up the braided ground. And it just takes a little bit of time. You're sort of pulling it out. I want to akin it to like combing a 6-year-old's hair that's full of knots. And then finally you get to the end. So essentially you're fraying it out like that. And then you can kind of pull it apart from all the other conductors and get it up and out of the way. Now you can see there's a paper sheathing that's inside of this wire too, as well as some strings. So what we're gonna do is we're going to make sure you grab all of the grounding hairs, the braided hairs here, and pull out any ones that are kind of fallen off. Get off of there. We'll clean that up there when we get to soldering. So yeah, you can see here we've got some paper, we've got some strings. You want to get rid of those too, so we'll just go. And they're essentially sit in between your twisted pairs and protecting your braided ground on the outside from like rubbing through and going through the insulation and then shorting out or anything like that. So this is what I mean by braided pairs. You can see they're kind of like twisted up in amongst each other. So that essentially, it goes like that all the way through the cable, and it prevents additional rejection and grounding from EMF and buzzing and radio waves and 60 cycle hum from stray electrical wires. I'm in an old house here, so we just want to do our best to prevent anything from messing up the audio signal. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of like pulling these little conductors apart, and then what I'll go through is find the 20 gauge number on the strippers here, and then we'll go and pull off, I want to say 1/4 inch, maybe between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of conductor, just enough so you can get it wrapped around its buddy and then soldered up. But I'll show you the ideal length at that point. Okay. Whenever you're stripping cables, make sure you have like a decently sharp pair of strippers, and try and go as like flat up from the base of the wire so you're not on a twist. If you're on a twist, what it'll do is it'll catch and like pull some of the actual conductors out, and you don't want that. You just want a nice clean pull of the insulation jacket around the wire. So just straight up, just like that. All right, so now that we have, and you can see here what my conductors kind of look like, just about 1/4 inch on all those. And then we will go and just manually twist them up. Twist, twist, twist. Excuse me. So what you want to do is you want to twist the blues and the whites, blues together and the whites together. And then now it's sort of coming together for you. I'm sure this is where we're getting our 3 conductors for our hot, cold, and ground. When they're short like this, they're not the easiest things to work with. And this cable I have found, this is the Canare, I forget the SKU on it. It's the L-4E6S Canare, essentially their version of a quad mic cable. And it seems like a fine cable. It's really, like, it's very consistent every time I've done a strip on it. Nothing is like looked weird. There isn't like weird bulges in the insulation. I will say the cable does have more what they call memory than other cables I've worked with. Gotham and Megami come to mind. Now those are also significantly more expensive than this. This runs about, I don't know, 50, 60 cents a foot, versus the Megami and the Gotham especially can get you like $150 to $250 a foot. Like it gets kind of expensive the more you go. Anyway, so yeah. Now we can start. You can see here I've paired up my conductors, and then the grounding weave is just like kind of left to the side. I don't like to twist them super tight. What I will do is I'll give them one twist. So right now, just to make sure all the hairs kind of stick together, as you can see, it's just sort of flammed out. Is flam a technical term? It is today. And then what I'll do is I'll give it one full twist. So one full twist, like so. And then the hair, I'll leave the hairs out at the end here, but I will make sure I don't have any hair sticking out that are at weird angles. So I'll just give it a nice, clean little haircut. Oh, if my strippers will do it. I'm doing it at a weird angle here. So it's a nice sort of like straight buzz cut there. Let's see. Okay. Cool. So now that we have our conductors all prepared, there's sort of a lot of methods to proper soldering techniques. A lot of people I see like to go and they'll tin the conductors first, throw them into the little holes that are into the connector, and then add some more solder on top of there, and then bond the two. I have found like 6 one, half dozen the other. I haven't found like a particularly best way to do that. I will say the one negative side of tinning and then trying to get them through the holes is the tinning adds a level of rigidity into the actual wire. So when you tin it, throw it through the connector hole, it's really tough to bend around and get to hold on, especially since I don't have a third hand here. You can get these little things that'll have little banana clips and they'll hang onto the wires for you. I don't have one, so yeah, I'm not going to tin first, but I will make sure all my connectors are straight, because I've noticed that these are sort of a budget connectors. I'm not using these as like my main in and outs for plugging in a patch bay or anything. This is just going to be, I might change the plug, or I might change the wiring setup 5 times in its whole life. So I just opted for like a cheap connector for these guys. If I'm building out a patch bay, I'll use proper like Nutric connectors. And again, like price difference, these are, affectionately recycled car parts. And these are like 50 cents a piece, versus Nutric connectors, exact same configuration, exact same size, but, made by a reputable company. Those run like $4 a piece. So, yeah, I'm just building out like my main line runs to go from the converters to my monitoring unit, and then from the monitoring unit to my speakers. Those I'm just going to use the cheaper connectors. There is no difference, and you're never going to tell me otherwise. There is no difference between using a cheap connector and an expensive connector when it comes to sound quality. The only benefit you get, I will say, is the material used for the strain relief and the actual conductors themselves, they're made so you can use them over and over and over again. They'll be a little bit more dexterous. There won't be any difference in sound sound quality, and you're never going to convince me otherwise. So how I'm going to wire this up, I've got 1, 2, 3 conductors, and then they're going to match up 1, 2, 3 conductors on this. I've always used, that's the thing that I'm just keeping consistent. I always use the white as my hot, and then the blue as my neutral, and then, the ground is the ground. So it keeps things easy and consistent, and then you don't have any phase issues. Because if you do it the other way around, then you get a phase flip, and then you got one speaker that's supposed to be pushing sound out, and the other speaker that's pulling sound in. So it's, anyway, that can get wonky. So all I'm doing is running, I'm going to do my hot connector first. I just essentially put it over the twisted pair, and then I'll bend it up a little bit, like so. So it looks like a little hook. In terms of the soldering iron, there's a lot of options out there. I found this one on Amazon. It's cool because it not only has an adapter for solder, but also a heat gun. So if you want to put little shrink wrap on your cables and stuff, yeah, we'll have that, which is going to be fantastic. I don't need it today, so it's not plugged in. And then this is the soldering wire to go on. So essentially, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of techniques out there. People talk about tinning the wire first before you do it. I'm not tinning today. And I also don't have any flux. Flux is used, it helps with flow rate. Flux is really good if you're going to be like cleaning up old soldering joints. If like you're fixing PCB boards, and you want to like clean things, you have like old connectors that you're taking solder joints off of and then putting new ones on. You want lots of flux and lots of wick to clean that up with. When you're dealing with new wires like these, I haven't really found like a benefit of flux. I've had flux in the past, and I didn't opt to buy any today. So we have no flux, which is totally fine. I haven't had any issues. I do wish I had a third hand at some point in times, but that's the other thing too, is like, if you know of an audio engineer, or if you have an audio engineer in your life, the two damning or beautiful qualities about them is either A, they're broke, or B, if they aren't broke, they're too cheap to buy things they don't, need. So yeah, here we go. We're gonna solder this first connector on. What I'll do, the thing with like little trick to solder that I found that always works well is just make sure everything's hot. So I'll just get my soldering iron onto the to the joint that I'm soldering. Make sure all my conductors are out of the way here. Can you see? You can sort of see. I'll get my soldering iron onto the joint. And then while that's getting heated up, again, this would be a good time to have a third hand because a little loosey-goosey. So as I was trucking along, I just checked the footage and I wanted to give you guys a better of an eagle-eye view of exactly how the soldering process looks and work and what you're looking for to make a good connection. So I'm getting my center connection through a little pin there, and I'm bending it up like so. And then I'm grabbing my soldering iron. I'll just give the tip of it a good clean here with the wool. And then we will come at the connector just like that. And as that's heating up, come on, you want a little bit of pressure, not much, just a little bit of pressure on there. And then get to flowing. And we're flowing. We're flowing. As you can see, it's coming up the wire, and it also, boom, went down the connector too. And there you go. You got a nice solder joint. Nice solder joint in there. All the way through. Okay. Oops. And now we drop the cable on the ground. Now we want to put the second wire through the pin here. I'm just going to bend this pin up a little bit to get the wire in. Oh, a bit more. Like so. We get the wire in. We pull it back, and then we push the connector back down a bit. And then same story. We'll actually put this here so I can have a little bit of... Again, we're going to put some pressure on there and then throw the solder down. Oh, don't touch the cardboard. There we go. The solder's flowing up the wire and onto the connector too, like so. Oh, I see I have a little bit of gap there in the hole. Let's see if we can get this a little bit more solder on there. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. And then finally we'll get the ground on. I have a little bit of steel wool just to keep the... What happens is when the tip heats up, it gets some oxidization. I think the flux would help with that, but we can just use a little bit of steel wool and it makes it nice and clean. And while the going's good, I'll see if I can get this ground on here with you guys watching still too. So when it comes to this this braided ground, I kind of like to leave the hairs a little bit splayed like this, and then that way when I go and what I'll do is I'll just lay it over the ground pin just like that, and then come at it with my solder and do the same thing. Sometimes the wire will have a little bit of spring in it, and I'll need to come back with a knife. Oh, come on. With a knife and just kind of hold it there while the solder cools, like so. Like so. And that's not a great connection, but I'm kind of doing this without my hands properly. So what we'll do is we'll just go, we have enough solder here, so I'll just go and reheat this little area. And again, push it down with the knife. Make sure it stays where it's supposed to be. Let that cool, and there we go. That's not bad. I've got a couple little, I don't know if you can see, a couple of hairs sticking up there, and those I'm just going to pull sideways and just make sure that they're out of the way. Grab my utility knife and cut them short, just to prevent any future risk of grounding issues, or shorting issues rather, in the future. You can actually run solder all the way up this this braid. Put some weight here and get the solder flowing. Get the solder flowing. Come on, flow. Flow, baby, flow. There we go. So as you can see, I just ran a little bit more solder along the braid here, and that makes it, prevents any of the hairs from spraying out and, you know, potentially touching any of these other conductors, which might make grounding issues at some point down the line. So let's just make sure, as you can see, this like metal conductor is a little bit bent in. So I'm just gonna very gently fold it out a bit. And there's quite a bit of, oh, you're over here. There's quite a bit of space in here. So none of my conductors are at risk of touching. I'm just gonna push this, the ring conductor down in a little bit, like so. We're in good shape. All right, so now I will take my strain relief, and the strain relief has a split down the center, so you can actually just throw it on after. Some of them don't, so just be mindful. You might have to get this on as well as your butt connector before you get to soldering. Sometimes you might have like little pickies sticking up. You know, it's always good practice to go in and clean them up the best you can. So, yeah, let's get our butt connector over that. Butt connector goes on the opposite side of the ground. And then, finally, we get to put our, put our cap over it. And our cap goes on. We have the color dial first. And then this goes over top of all this, like so. And it'll seat, you can see that's like seated correctly in there. And then we take our butt and slide butt up. And then tighten this down. So our job is almost done. I'm going to turn on my ohm meter here, which is set to, currently set to, you can't see, currently set to resistance. And it's gonna tell me if I have a short or not. What I wanna check is I wanna make sure that all of my connectors are behaving properly. So what else I'll do is I'll find the white connector in here, just jam my point on there and take my ground and make sure that the tip is good. So this should ring. That's good. But I also want to check and make sure none of my other connectors are shorting out either. So this one, we're good. This one, we're good. Next, I want to take the tip onto the blue conductor and jam that in there. And that's essentially the same purpose. I should get nothing on the tip, nothing on the ring, or nothing on the tip, nothing on the ground, but I should get conductivity on the ring. There you go. Nothing and nothing. Good, we're in good shape. And then finally the ground, which is that braid. And we should have conduction here, here, but not here, and not here. We're in good shape. Okay. That's, ladies and gentlemen, is how I solder my cables. So I'm gonna do the other end and then give it one last test and then we're all done. Thanks for watching.